Welcome back to the deep dive. This time, we're going to be diving into the world of biotech startups in Argentina. You've given us some really fascinating academic research on this.
Yeah,
It seems like it's a sector that's just exploding with potential, but also facing some, pretty unique challenges.
absolutely. I mean, we always hear about, the big biotech hubs in the US and Europe,
Right.
but Argentina is kind of quietly building a really vibrant sector of its own. And they're doing things a little bit differently.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting about this. So our kind of mission today is to, help all of you listening understand how these new biotech businesses are even getting started. Like, what are the hurdles they're facing and what strategies are they using to try to make it in this, very complex landscape?
Well, the research shows that Argentina's biotech sector is experiencing like really rapid growth, especially a significant number of startups that have been founded just in the last decade.
Wow, that's a huge surge. What's driving all this growth?
Well, there are several factors at play here. Um, Argentina has a very strong history of scientific excellence. I mean, they have a really skilled workforce, very talented scientists and engineers, and a wealth of natural resources. And think about it, they have diverse ecosystems, a really strong agricultural base. These can be real assets in the biotech field.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like they have all the ingredients, all the building blocks for a really thriving biotech scene.
They do.
But you mentioned challenges too. What are some of the roadblocks that these startups are running into?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest challenges is securing funding,
Mm,
especially in that really critical phase between kind of the initial research phase and, getting an actual product out to market.
right.
It's often called the valley of death,
Oh,
where
wow.
startups are just struggling to find the resources they need to scale up, validate their technology, and then navigate, the whole regulatory maze.
Ooh, the Valley of Death. That sounds pretty ominous.
It is.
So how are these Argentine startups navigating this, kind of treacherous terrain?
Well, the research dives into four specific case studies,
Okay.
and each of them is tackling this challenge in a really unique way. So one example is this group called Tejidos,
Okay.
and they are doing some seriously cutting-edge work.
Oh, wow.
They're developing bone tissue
What?
using biomaterials. And get this, these biomaterials are derived from silkworms.
Silkworm bone tissue. That's amazing. So where are they now in this whole Valley of Death journey?
Well, they have secured patents for their technology,
Okay.
which is a great first step, but they are still really in those early stages. They have to prove that this technology really works reliably, and then they have to figure out the whole business side of things.
Right, because it's one thing to have this incredible scientific breakthrough,
Exactly.
but it's a whole other thing to then translate that into, an actual product that people need and connect with those customers, right?
Exactly. Understanding their needs, demonstrating the value of their innovation. I mean, those are kind of the next hurdles for them.
Makes sense. So who else are we meeting on this deep dive?
All right, so next up we have Anticuerpos, and they are focusing on kind of a critical process in biotech,
Okay.
and that is antibody purification.
Okay.
Antibodies are these amazing proteins used in all sorts of applications, from like diagnostics to therapeutics, all kinds of things. But purifying them, it can be super expensive
Yeah.
and really time consuming.
Oh, I see. So if you can come up with a more cost-effective purification method,
Exactly.
that's like a game
It
changer.
would be huge for the industry.
Huge.
So what Anticuerpos has done is they've developed a platform that makes this whole purification process way more efficient
Okay.
and, a lot more affordable.
Great.
And here's the really exciting part. They haven't just been kind of working in a vacuum.
Right.
They've gone out and actually talked to potential customers.
Oh.
They've been validating their technology, and they've even secured letters of intent to purchase.
Wow. So they're already generating buzz in the market. So what challenges are they facing now?
Well, their biggest hurdle at this point is scaling up production.
Okay.
I mean, imagine you're Anticuerpos.
Mm.
You've got all these buyers lined up, but can you actually deliver on those promises?
Right.
So they've got to ramp up production, optimize their processes, and of course, meet all of those, really stringent regulatory requirements that come with any biotech product.
Right. Which I imagine is a whole other beast.
It is. It's a big leap for them.
Yeah, definitely not easy. Okay, so we've got two very different startups with two very different sets of challenges. What about case study number 3?
All right. So case study number 3 is Kitasano,
Mm.
and they're focused on producing titasan,
Okay.
which is a biomaterial that has tons of applications. I mean, from food preservation to wound healing.
Really?
Yeah, all sorts of things. And their innovation is that they are creating a high-quality, low-cost chitosan from crustacean shells.
From crustacean shells. That's fascinating. It sounds like they're using like a really readily available and sustainable resource.
Exactly.
So where are they at in their journey?
Well, they've proven that their technology has potential.
Okay.
They've done it in the lab, but now they need to kind of take it to that next level.
Right.
And for them, that means getting the funding to build a pilot plant.
Okay.
Think of it as like a proving ground
Yeah.
where they can test and refine their production process, but at a much larger scale.
Okay.
And that brings us to like the second part of their challenge, which is this whole technology transfer piece.
Technology transfer. What does that mean exactly?
Well, technology transfer is basically the process of, taking an invention
Right.
that's been developed in a lab setting
Right.
and making it ready for the real world. So it involves like adapting the technology for large-scale production, figuring out all the manufacturing logistics, and making sure that it meets all the necessary safety and quality standards.
Right, because it's one thing to have this brilliant idea in the lab,
Yeah.
but it's another thing to figure out how to actually make it work in a way that's, commercially viable.
Exactly.
All right, bring on case study number 4.
Okay, so our final case study is Alimentos, and they've developed a system for producing live feed for the aquaculture industry.
Okay.
As the demand for sustainable protein sources keeps growing,
Right.
aquaculture is becoming so important.
Absolutely.
And Alimentos is really well positioned to kind of play a key role there.
Yeah, they're like riding this global wave. That's smart.
Yeah.
So in terms of the Valley of Death, where do they stand?
Well, they've actually been really successful in attracting both private investment and government grants.
Oh, wow, that's huge.
It is. That's a huge accomplishment for them. But now their challenge is scaling up production to meet this massive demand in this aquaculture industry.
Right, because if they have all that funding and that market opportunity,
Yeah.
it sounds like they're, poised for success
Yeah.
if they can figure out how to meet that demand. So it's so interesting to see how each of these startups is kind of facing a different piece of this Valley of Death puzzle.
Yeah.
But is there like a common thread here?
There is.
A lesson they can all learn from each other?
Absolutely. The research emphasizes again and again how important it is to engage with potential customers early on.
Really?
Yeah, they can't just stay in the lab,
Right.
no matter how brilliant their science is.
So it's not enough to just have like this amazing idea.
Right.
You need to understand, the market, what your customers actually need,
Right.
and how your invention actually fits into that whole landscape.
Exactly. I mean, the successful startups, especially in a field as complex as biotech,
Yeah.
they're the ones who are thinking about the business side of things from day one.
Makes sense.
It's about understanding that market need and then tailoring your development accordingly.
Got it. Okay, so we've got a good sense of the challenges and some of the strategies that are being used on the ground level.
Yeah.
But what about the role of the Argentine government in all this?
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that they're trying to support these startups. What's like the bigger picture here?
Well, the Argentine government has launched several programs designed to help these biotech startups. They're offering grants and loans and incubation programs to help these companies, kind of get off the ground and navigate that challenging valley of death.
That sounds promising. But are they doing everything right? Are there some things they could improve?
Well, I mean, their intentions are good and the support is definitely there.
Yeah.
But the research does point to some areas where these programs could be even more effective.
Oh.
One key point is that the programs could be more tailored to the specific needs of startups, that are at different stages of development.
It's like trying to fit everyone into a one-size-fits-all.
Exactly.
Right. A startup that's just starting out, it's just an idea,
Right.
probably needs a very different type of support than a company that's ready to, scale up their production and, go big.
Exactly. And another issue that the research highlights is that some programs prioritize technological development
Okay.
over market validation.
I see.
So they might be funding startups to create all these incredible technologies,
Right.
but those technologies might not actually have a market
Right.
or any buyers.
So it's about kind of finding that balance
Yeah.
between like fostering scientific innovation, but then also making sure that those innovations have, a real world application.
Exactly. And that's where a deeper understanding of the market.
Right.
And that early engagement with potential customers really comes into play.
Yeah.
It's something that the Argentine government could, encourage a little more actively within these support programs.
So we're starting to see like a bigger picture here. It sounds like the Argentine government is doing some good things, but they need to kind of refine their approach
Yeah.
to make sure that all this funding and support is actually aligned with both the scientific and commercial realities of the sector.
That's right, because it's not just about funding.
Right.
It's about providing the right resources and mentorship
Right.
at the right time
Right.
to help these startups navigate this tricky valley of death and really nurture a biotech ecosystem that can thrive.
It's all about strategy, really.
Yeah.
And speaking of strategy, there are a few more really interesting ideas from our source material
Yes.
that we should explore. This deep dive is just getting started.
Yes, it is.
We'll be right back after a short break.
So one kind of intriguing strategy that the research highlights is this idea of dancing with gorillas.
Whoa, hold on. Dancing with the gorillas, that's a pretty wild visual. Okay, so we're not talking about like actual primates here, are we?
Not quite, no.
Yeah.
Although that would be an interesting research project.
Oh.
But the gorillas, in this case, they're referring to, like the big established companies,
Okay.
the heavy hitters in whatever industry these startups are trying to break into. So think multinational pharmaceutical companies or like the giants in agriculture or the major players in, food or medical devices.
Okay, I'm starting with the picture. So how did these small startups actually dance with these big companies? Like, how does that even work, and how does it benefit both sides?
Well, the idea is that instead of trying to, compete head to head with these giants, the startups can actually leverage the gorillas' resources, their networks, their expertise
Okay.
through strategic partnerships. It's about recognizing that you don't have to do everything yourself.
Right. It's like, I don't know, it's like a tango where like the startup is leading with their innovation, their agility.
Yeah.
But the gorilla provides that kind of stability and that gorilla-ness.
Exactly.
Okay, so I like it. What are like some specific examples of like how this dancing with gorillas actually works in practice?
Sure. So one kind of classic move is, licensing agreements.
Okay.
So let's say a startup has developed this really promising new technology,
Right.
but they don't have the resources to, actually manufacture it on a large scale and to deal with all the regulations and all that. So they can actually license that technology to a larger company,
Right.
one that already has, the infrastructure.
Yeah, they have the know-how.
They've got the expertise
Yeah.
to bring it to market. So the startup gets to see their innovation actually come to life. They generate some revenue, and the larger company gets access to, this cutting-edge technology without having to go through all the trouble of developing it themselves.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know, like renting out your innovation to a company that can actually put it to work.
Exactly.
Smart. What other dance moves are there?
Another approach is joint ventures.
Okay.
So in this scenario, you've got the startup, you've got the established company, and they decide to kind of pool their resources, their expertise, and they create like a whole new entity,
Okay.
like a separate company that's solely focused on developing and commercializing the startup's technology.
Oh, wow.
It's a much deeper level of collaboration
Yeah.
where both sides are, invested in the success of this new venture.
Ah, so they're creating like a whole new dance floor together.
Exactly.
It's a win-win, right? The startup gets access to resources and guidance, things that they wouldn't have on their own.
Right.
And the big company, well, they get this fresh, dose of innovation.
They did
It's
it.
a way to kind of tap into that agility and creativity of the startup world.
Yeah, yeah.
So are there any real-world examples of this actually happening in the Argentine biotech scene?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The research highlights a few Argentine biotech startups that have been really successful with this dancing with gorillas approach. For example, there's this one company that specializes in plant-based bioproducts,
Okay.
and they formed a joint venture with a huge multinational agricultural corporation.
Wow.
And as a result of that partnership, they were able to, tap into this huge global distribution network
Yeah.
and really scale up their production. They went from being this small operation to becoming like a major player in the industry, all thanks to one really well-executed dance move.
That's incredible. It shows like the potential of this strategy for sure.
Yeah.
So for our listeners who might be, thinking about getting involved in this world, what are some key takeaways? Like, what do they need to know about, finding the right dance partner?
Well, I think one of the most important things is that these partnerships, they have to be approached strategically.
Okay.
The startups really need to, do their homework. They need to identify their strengths, their weaknesses,
Yeah.
what they're looking for in a partner.
Right.
It's not just about partnering with any big company.
Right. It's got to be the right fit.
Exactly. You need a partner who's going to help you shine, not, step all over you.
Yeah. Right. You need a gorilla with a good sense of rhythm.
Yes, and a genuine interest in your success.
Exactly. So how would how would they even go about finding these potential dance partners? Where do they start?
Networking is so crucial.
Okay.
Going to industry events, conferences, trade shows,
Yeah.
Putting yourself out there, having conversations, building relationships.
Yeah, network, network, network. It's
Yes.
all about building those relationships and finding those gorillas who are ready to, tango. But let's not forget about the music for a second.
Right.
Earlier, we were talking about the Argentine government's efforts to kind of create a more supportive environment for these startups. What kind of tunes are they playing, and how can they improve the playlist, so to speak?
Well, the research actually kind of digs into a few specific government programs
Okay.
that are designed to foster biotech innovation. One that stood out to me was this program called PTC Startup. And this one's really interesting because it specifically targets those research groups that have a promising technology, one with real commercial potential.
So it's like a talent scout for biotech.
Exactly. Looking for the next big thing.
So what are the criteria? Like, what makes a research group stand out in this program?
Well, to be eligible for this program, these research groups, they have to go beyond just having, a cool scientific discovery.
Right.
They have to show that they understand the market need for their technology
Coke.
and have a plan for how they're going to turn that research into like a viable product.
So they have to prove that they can translate their brilliance in the lab into, something that will have a real world impact.
Yes, exactly. It's a competitive program.
Yeah.
It's designed to support those who have a real shot at success.
Okay.
The ones who are ready to make that leap from the lab out into the marketplace.
So PCT Startup is all about supporting those early stage ventures. But what about startups that are like a bit further along? Are there other programs for those companies?
Yes. There's another notable program called Techno,
Okay.
and this one's a little more advanced.
Yeah.
It focuses on those startups that have already developed a prototype,
Okay.
and it helps them take things to the next level, to, scale up their technology,
Right.
and then eventually to actually form a new company.
Ah, so this is for startups that are ready to, level up, to go from prototype to a fully functioning company. So what kind of support does this program provide?
Well, it offers financial assistance for a whole range of activities.
Okay.
Things like, scaling up production, testing prototypes in real-world settings, and of course, navigating that regulatory process.
Mhm.
It's all about helping startups overcome those hurdles that often, trip them up in those later stages of development.
Right, because that can be a whole other set of challenges, right?
Ex-
You've got your prototype, but then how do you actually take it to market?
Exactly. It's a big leap.
Yeah, and this program sounds like a really valuable resource for those startups that are ready to make that transition. Are there any other government programs that we should know about? Any initiatives that focus specifically on those really, really early stage startups, like the ones that are just, starting to sprout?
Yes. There's also the Fondo Samila program.
Okay.
And I like this one a lot because it focuses on both the technological and the commercial aspects of a startup, like right from the beginning.
Oh, interesting.
It recognizes that you need both the science and the business savvy to really make it in the biotech world.
I love that. It's like a more holistic approach
Yeah.
where they're supporting not just, the scientific innovation,
Right.
but also the entrepreneurial spirit.
Exactly.
So how does this program actually work?
So the startups that qualify for this program, they get, some financial support,
Okay.
which is always helpful,
Yeah.
but they also get mentorship from experienced entrepreneurs and investors.
Yeah.
And they get access to all these networks of potential partners and collaborators. So it's about providing like a comprehensive support system
Yeah.
to help these early stage ventures find their footing and, get on the right track.
Okay, so they're getting funding, they're getting guidance, and they're getting connections.
Yep.
It sounds like the Argentine government is really going all out to, create this fertile ground for biotech startups to grow. But is there anything they could be doing better? Like, what could make these programs even more effective?
Well, the research does suggest that some of these programs could be even more impactful
Okay.
if they were better coordinated with each other.
Okay. How so?
So right now, each program kind of operates, on its own.
Okay.
It would be really helpful if there was like a more streamlined system,
Right.
something that actually connected these programs and kind of guided startups through the different stages of development.
So it's like instead of having to navigate this like complicated maze of different programs,
Right.
you'd have a clear path to follow
Exactly.
with the right kind of support at each stage.
Yes. And it would make the whole process less intimidating
Yeah.
and a lot more efficient.
So yeah, coordination and streamlining seem key.
Yeah.
Are there any other areas for improvement that the research mentions?
Another suggestion is for the government to, you know, really think about new ways to encourage private investment in the sector.
Right, because you mentioned earlier that lack of investment is like one of the biggest hurdles.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And the government can play a really big role in attracting more of that private capital.
So how could they create a more investor-friendly environment?
Well, they could think about things like, tax incentives
Okay.
for investors who put money into biotech startups, or maybe creating a venture capital fund
Right.
that's specifically for this sector. I mean, those kinds of initiatives, they
Yeah.
send a really strong signal to investors that Argentina is serious about supporting biotech innovation.
That's a really good point. So there are definitely some areas for improvement.
Yeah.
But overall, it sounds like the Argentine government is making, some pretty solid moves to support this growing sector.
Yeah, they are. And it'll be really interesting to see how these initiatives evolve in the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an exciting time for Argentine biotech. I mean, I'm so curious to see how these startups continue to innovate
Yeah.
and navigate all the challenges ahead.
Please do.
I feel like we've covered so much ground today.
Yeah.
From those specific challenges faced by these individual startups to these broader government initiatives.
Right.
But what does it all mean? Like
Mhm.
for our listeners who are thinking about, maybe getting involved in this world,
Yeah.
what's the big takeaway?
What really strikes me is that despite all of these challenges, there's just this, real sense of optimism and innovation within the Argentine biotech sector. There's a real can-do spirit.
Yeah.
This feeling that they're finding ways to, overcome obstacles, build partnerships, and just like bring their innovations to the world.
It really is like a testament to the ingenuity and the resilience
Yeah.
of these entrepreneurs. And I think it's, inspiring for sure. But let's zoom out for a second. We've been, really focused on these specific government programs.
Right.
But what about the broader regulatory landscape for biotech in Argentina?
Right.
Is it helping or is it actually hindering these startups that are trying to get their products out there?
It's a really important question because it's one thing to have, government support and all these innovative strategies.
Right.
But if the regulatory environment is just a nightmare,
Yeah.
it can really slow things down.
Yeah, for sure. It's one thing to have the the will and the ideas,
Yeah.
but if you're like constantly battling bureaucracy,
Right.
it's got to be tough.
Yeah. And the research, it actually paints a pretty interesting picture of the regulatory landscape in Argentina.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of a mixed bag.
Interesting. Okay, tell me more.
So on the one hand, Argentina has a fairly, strong regulatory framework for biotechnology,
Okay.
especially in areas like, biosafety and genetic engineering.
Okay.
They're not messing around when it comes to, the ethical considerations.
Right.
And safety, of course.
Right. So they're taking that stuff seriously, which is good.
It is.
It shows that they're, really committed to responsible innovation.
Exactly.
But you said it's a mixed bag. So what's the downside?
Well, the tricky part is when you look at the approval processes for new biotech products,
Okay.
the research suggests that these processes can be a little bit, they can be lengthy
Okay.
and a bit bureaucratic.
Ah, I see. So red tape.
Yeah, pretty much.
That last.
A tale as old as time.
Yeah, and I bet it's especially frustrating, in a field like biotech where things move so quickly.
It is. It's something that, that the Argentine government is aware of, and they are exploring ways to, make those processes a little bit more efficient,
Okay.
a little more startup friendly.
Yeah.
But of course, without compromising those, really important safety and ethical standards.
Right. So it's like it's a tough balance,
It is.
because you want to make sure that everything's being done responsibly,
Right.
but you also don't want to stifle innovation with all this, bureaucracy.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so let's shift gears for a second
Okay.
and talk about the startups themselves.
Right.
The research mentions this interesting concept of dancing in the moonlight.
Oh, yeah.
What is that all about? Is this like an after party
Yeah.
once they're done dancing with the gorillas?
Not quite, although I'm sure there are some pretty epic celebrations in the Argentine biotech scene.
Right.
But dancing in the moonlight, it refers to like the unique advantages that these Argentine biotech startups have in the global marketplace.
Got it.
It's about kind of shining on the world stage.
Okay, so they're not like literally dancing in the moonlight,
No,
but they are making some moves globally.
they are.
Okay, I like it. So what are some of those like unique advantages? What makes them, stand out?
Well, one major advantage is Argentina's, just really strong scientific foundation.
Right. We've talked about that.
We have,
They've got the talent, the researchers,
Yeah,
this history of excellence.
exactly. And all of that translates into like, really high quality research and development,
Right.
which is a huge asset in the biotech world.
Yeah, it's like they have this deep well of, scientific knowledge that they can tap into.
Exactly.
But what else, kind of gives them that edge?
Another big advantage is Argentina's cost competitiveness.
Okay.
I mean, the cost of labor, research, development,
Yeah.
it's significantly lower in Argentina
Right.
than in a lot of other biotech hubs around the world.
So they can stretch their funding further, they
yeah.
can be more agile, and they can potentially develop products that are more affordable, right?
Exactly. I mean, especially in an industry like biotech, where the costs can just be astronomical,
Oh, yeah.
this gives them a real advantage.
Huge advantage.
Yeah, it allows them to be more competitive globally.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's not all.
Okay.
Argentina also has this, incredible wealth of natural resources,
Right.
particularly in areas like biodiversity
Yeah.
and agricultural production, which can be like huge assets
Right.
for biotech innovation.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they've got these diverse ecosystems, this wide range of, plant and animal species, and then a long history of agricultural expertise.
Exactly.
And all of that can be, kind of harnessed to create new medicines, biomaterials, all sorts of innovations.
Yes, and the research highlights a few examples of Argentine biotech startups that are already kind of making a splash internationally.
Oh, cool.
One that I thought was really interesting, they developed a diagnostic test
Okay.
for a tropical disease
Okay.
that affects a lot of people around the world.
Wow.
And it's a breakthrough. It's a really innovative test.
Amazing.
And they've partnered with international organizations
Great.
to distribute it globally.
That's a great example of, Argentine innovation actually making a real difference on like a worldwide scale.
Yeah, and there are lots of stories like that
That's amazing.
coming out of the Argentine biotech sector.
Yeah, it's really inspiring to see,
It is.
these startups not just like, getting by, but actually thriving and making a real impact.
Absolutely. It's a sector that is absolutely brimming with potential.
Yeah, that comes through loud and clear.
It does.
So for our listeners who might be thinking about, maybe investing in, partnering with, or even just learning more about this sector,
Yeah.
what's like the big takeaway for them? What should they remember from our deep dive today?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the Argentine biotech sector is one to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, they have the talent, they have the resources,
How to drive.
they have the ambition, they have the ingenuity
Yeah,
to really become a major player on that global stage.
I love that.
It's a reminder that innovation can really happen anywhere.
Right.
And that sometimes the most exciting opportunities are, kind of off the beaten path.
I love that. It's a great story
It is.
of innovation, resilience, and, just this global ambition.
Yeah.
And it all starts in Argentina.
Yeah.
This has been such an incredible journey, exploring this with you.
It has.
I feel like I've learned so much,
Me too.
gained this whole new perspective on biotech. So thank you so much for sharing your insights.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And of course, a huge thanks to our listeners for, suggesting this topic and providing such, amazing source material.
Yes, thank you.
We always love getting lost in a good research rabbit hole. We do with all of you.
We do.
And to all our listeners out there, if you have a topic that you want us to deep dive into, just send us your sources.
Please do.
We are always so eager to explore, new frontiers of knowledge.
Yes, we are.
So until next time,
Until next time,
keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
keep diving.